Hey, everybody. So, welcome to Living a Healthy Lifestyle Show with your favorite holistic health coach, Carrie Kay. And today I'm going to be interviewing awesome Dr. Harmon. A little bit about Dr. Harmon. He wrote an amazing book, How to Reverse Aging, on HG copper peptides. Dr. Harmon is the president of Clear Mind, Ohio, Idaho, studied biofeedback certification, intermediate alliance or international alliance, studied at the Los Angeles College for Chiropractic. And we're going to add him to the stage today. How are you, Dr. Harmon?
Thank you. I'm doing well.
Awesome. So you are a brand new author. I was telling everybody for the book called Reverse Aging, The Guide to Copper Peptides. Yes. And you're the owner and president of Clear Mind, Idaho. And you help people with brain-based disorders by returning balance to the primitive brain where fight or flight system is located. And you work with light frequencies. So welcome to the show, Dr. Harmon. Thank you so much for being my special guest today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to share this information with everybody. Just one little correction there. The fight or flight is not located in the brainstem. It's an interesting situation where it's out where it needs to be, so it can turn everything on at once. And it's the neurons for that system is along outside of the spinal column, so that you see the tiger coming at you, you can adrenalize everything, so to speak.
Oh.
So we bring balance between the fight or flight and the other part that's for resting, digesting, healing. That gets way out of whack, and then people have this underlying anxiety and can't shut the busy mind off, and other things, digestive problems, obviously immune function problems. So we balance that out, help people out.
Okay, well, thank you for making that clear. I've been reading a little bit on your book, and I have some really awesome questions for you. So your book is a life changer. That is so awesome. And it's the single most important fact that you discovered writing this book. What was that?
Oh, when I was going through all of the research, I was, I knew it was a very important peptide. But when I found out that there really isn't a system in the body that it doesn't drastically affect, like everything from new capillary growth to brain regeneration, neuron regeneration, and everything in between, skin, cardiovascular, it was everything. That's why it's so important.
Oh, wow. And how does that relate to altering cognitive decline in Alzheimer's and dementia? And I do want to mention that anything that you talk about today is not going to heal, treat, or cure anybody, but you're just giving information to everyone. So how does that relate to that, to the epidemic that we're going through now with that?
To start with that, I think I will start with what happens when we are doing new tasks. It's all about building, maintaining, restoring, regenerating synapses, and I'll tell you what those are, and your connections, your neurons in between those synapses. So synapses are the junction between neurons, and that's where neurotransmitters are used to do either make something ramp up or to slow something down. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish in the brain. Well, there's a substance that our brain makes when we are doing a new task for at least 45 seconds. The brain, I say it makes decisions. It's automatic, but it says, hey, she's done that for a little while now. She's probably going to do it again. And she did it yesterday too. So, hey, let's make some new connections so she has better control over it, finer control, and so she can do it better. This is what neuroplasticity is all about. We make new connections. If we do something new, we learn something new, we read something, we learn how to play an instrument. Our brain has to make those connections to talk in the networks and hubs and right to left and front to back and all of those coordinating things that we have to do. Well, the GHK copper peptide is essential in the pathway to make that substance called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. I'll just say BDNF from now on. Too many words, too many long words. So BDNF, your body has to have that GHK copper peptide in that process. It also has to be present in order to make neuropeptides. So in neurotransmitter, excuse me, it also has to be present in order to build new neurons. And so you have this all important copper that has to be delivered into the brain. And it's the GHK copper peptide that acts like a chaperone or a tour guide. And it hooks onto that copper because you don't want to have a bunch of free copper out. That's where the toxicity can occur. So the GHK copper peptide is the chaperone, and it actually transports copper through the blood-brain barrier, gets it into the brain, holds on to it until it's needed, and then it gifts the copper where it's needed in whatever process is happening in the brain. So when you look at cognitive decline as we age, it's all about restoring neurons that we lose. And I've heard anything from 9,000 a day to 90,000 a day that we lose. We have to replenish those. We have to regenerate. And he who can do that can still remember who he is when he's in his 80s.
Oh, and wow.
It, doesn't go through so much of that. So those are some very kind of basic things about the brain and maintaining those neurons and those connections.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Very well said. So some people may misunderstand when you mention copper and you have talked a little bit about that just a minute ago, that I have read that copper toxicity can contribute to Alzheimer's. And I know you recommend a way to prevent this from happening. So you want to go in more information on that?
Yeah, I look at that a little bit differently in that, and this, I have no proof of this. This is just me looking at the process and the fact that copper is that chaperone tour guide, guiding it through the blood-brain barrier. And I look at it like, if I don't have enough GHK copper peptide to hold on to that copper, to let it go when it's needed, now you might potentially have free copper in the brain that can build up and then lead to that. So should someone stop taking copper? Absolutely not. Should someone have more GHK copper peptide? That's where I think the answer is, to prevent those types of things and make sure that all important copper is one of the most important minerals in our body is copper.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for clarifying that. As you are the founder of Clear Mind Idaho, please tell us more about the improving cognition.
As far as the GHK is concerned?
Yep.
Well, we use that. There was a brain study done on using quantitative EEG. That happens to be my board certification is in QEEG. That is looking at the electrical balance or imbalance in the brain and knowing what it means and what to do about it, those types of things. So what they did, they used a measurement. Well, they used multiple measurements, but the one that is talked about in the study that was done, it was a 6-week study. They did a QEEG to start, another one halfway through, and another one at the end. And they were measuring coherence. Coherence is the all-important crosstalk. We have right and left hemispheres, and different things happen. And this sentence, I'll never forget this from my training. Every single thing we do is done predominantly 80% on one side of the brain as opposed to the other. but every single thing we do involves the whole brain. So it's not like you say, okay, I'm just going to isolate this little thing because it got a lot of other coordinating things going on. But they were looking at how much crosstalk is there between right and left. Where there's too much or hypercoherence, there's the more hypercoherence someone has, the more kind of log jammed everything is, like 5 o'clock traffic. The more someone has of that, the more autistic they are. Where we have hypocoherence, where there's not enough crosstalk, the more of that one has, the more cognitive decline we have. So they looked at those measurements, and what they found, it kind of, the GHK copper peptide kind of provided the action of an adaptogen herb where it was too high, it brought it down to normal. Where it was too low, it brought it up to normal. So these people in this study had a much more balanced brain, less hypercoherence. And I describe that in my office when I'm talking to patients. I say, this is hypercoherence, squirrel. So it causes a lot of, hyperactive brain, really, and less hypocoherence, so better cognition. So this checks another box for us, and this is why we use them in our protocols in my office, in addition to the important for making BDNF, making neurotransmitters, regenerating neurons. So it's all good for the brain.
So you've also written about the remarkable improvement to cardiovascular system with copper peptides. Please explain how that works with the cardiovascular system.
Yeah, and there was a 10-year study done on men, and they did all kinds of measurements from the body, and one of them was what's called fibrinogen level. Fibrinogen, you can kind of get from the name of it. It's made of fiber, and fibrinogen, when you have that, you have to have some of it because we have to clot. We have to, if we get a bleed or we get a cut, we have to be able to patch that leak and then fix it. Well, an excess of fibrinogen, they found over this 10-year study, was the number one factor. It increased a person's risk of having a stroke by 2.4 times. So over the study. So where does that come in with the GHK? So the GHK copper peptide inhibits a gene that's essential in making part of that fibrinogen molecule. So what it does, it prevents it from getting out of control and making too much fibrinogen. If that's the only thing that GH copper peptide did, cardiovascular, the strokes, one of the number one killers, that would be a huge deal. But that's only one little thing that this peptide does. And this is what fascinated me. I was oddly attracted to the cardiovascular portion of the organ function study. You can find that on Lifeway's website. It's not specifically cardiovascular. You won't find it listed as that. It's in an organ function study. And they found that for after wearing the X39 for 6 weeks, the cardiovascular systems acted, it's a different way of saying reversed, but they said acted 2 months younger. And right away in my early days in Lifeway, I did the math and I said, well, that means for every day I wear the patch, my cardiovascular system acts a day and a third younger. That thing played out for me over a period of a year and a half, where I found out 4.5 months after I already started using the X39, and I had a stress echo done. It's for weird things I felt in my heart. I did not know that I had a right bundle branch block at that juncture. It was a surprise. But you know what my first thought was? Why didn't these, we called them stem cell activation patches back then, the FDA's kind of frowning on anything that says stem cells in it. So we call them body activation patches. But my thought was, why isn't this better already? I mean, I've been using these for 4.5 months. A year and a half later, I had another stress echo done. The test came back, and right bundle branch block no longer present. So I always tell people, when you go into, if you are using if you're getting this GHK copper peptide, whether you're getting it from an IV, whether you're getting it from an injection, or whether you're getting it from wearing the photobiomodulation patch, things take time. And you may not even know that you have something, but if you are looking at what is improving, you have to have some kind of a measurement. So ask yourself, what am I measuring to tell me whether or not these things are working? Everybody wants them to work, but sometimes we're a little bit selfish and we want it to do one thing for us. And if it doesn't do that, then we didn't know that anything happened. I would never have known I had a right bundle branch block. It would have gone away, and I never would have known that either had I not had those measurements, those 2 tests done. So I always ask people, what are you measuring?
I love that. I absolutely love that, because we have people all the time saying, well, you're talking about the power of the patch, but I'm not feeling anything. Well, do you feel your blood flow? Do you feel your body? I mean, it's kind of one of those questions, right?
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit facetious when somebody says that. I say, well, what are you measuring? Oh, well, I want my knee pain to go away. And I go, oh, I thought you were going to be doing blood tests and organ function study and kidney filtration and, heart rate variability and all that stuff. It was about the pain. Okay. Well, monitor that. At least you know what you're measuring there.
Exactly. And how long did it take for your body to get this way? As a certified holistic coach, that's what I share with my clients. It's going to take time. It is a microwave society, unfortunately. But one of the biggest benefits of the copper peptides is for athletes. Can you tell us about the performance and the energy production that you've seen? Because this is really huge with athletes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I found out doing this research that no one ever talked about before. In some of the PowerPoint presentations I did back through the last 3 years, I did talk about chemo attracting capillaries. And let me explain what that is. So the GHK copper peptide is known as an emergency response peptide. Peptides are signaling molecules. It tells your body to do something. Unless you have a nerve that directly connects something with a neurotransmitter pathway, you have to get a message to the body to do something. Somehow, insulin is a peptide. Norepinephrine is a peptide. GHK copper peptide also. So when something happens, an injury, we have cuts, we have things going on. It's the GHK copper peptide that acts like the Pied Piper, attracting capillary growth into this damaged tissue. Imagine the Pied Piper playing its thing. He says, come on, fellas. Now the capillaries start growing in there, but not only that, also smooth muscle that is part of that, that system. You don't just have little tubes, they have little smooth muscles in them because they have to get bigger, open up or close down. So keep that in mind now that we're talking about exercise. So we exercise. I'll never forget when I was in junior high school, I was a news watcher as a kid. I was always watching the news. And then I heard this report. It said exercise causes, I didn't know what it meant back then, oxidative stress, and it's harmful at first. And I thought, well, that's crazy. I'm working out. That's beneficial. That helps me. But it does. It causes a lot of oxidative stress on the body. And there's a deprivation of oxygen where you're really working hard, doing heavy weights and multiple reps. The deprivation of oxygen is what triggers this system of, hey, I got to get some more circulation into that muscle because there's not enough oxygen in there. And in the book, I describe that pathway in detail. I won't talk about it now. But if you think about that, hold that in the back of your mind. You got to get more oxygen. You have to have more vessels. Vessels take up space. That starts to build muscle mass. Now, they need more, elegant studies that are done on, does the GHK copper peptide actually help one build muscle mass? But the preliminary results are yes, you're building more capillaries, and then the people talk about, these bodybuilders, man, look at those veins and those arteries are just, well, that all starts with the GHK copper peptide telling your body, grow more capillaries into that. Capillaries then get bigger. They lead into arterioles and then arteries. And so now you have all of this raw material that can come in and help you build that muscle mass.
Oh, wow. That was a great explanation.
One more thing about the energy. Okay.
Energy, yeah.
He who can work out harder and recover faster gets better at whatever they do. They get bigger, they get better, they can get back in the gym. It is the GHK copper peptide that helps at the mitochondria level, and it's cytochrome C. It's right in where we're going through making ATP. We make more ATP, we have more energy to do work, we recover faster, we get back in the gym faster. Little capillaries grow into this new muscle that you're trying to build faster, so we build faster. So that is the connection for athletic performance.
Oh, wow. And you were talking about bone health for a little bit. I'm just interested on how the copper peptides also create bone health.
Yeah, that's the AHK copper peptide. The GHK is involved as well, but the study that was done on the X49, the other photobiomodulation patch, I don't know if we can say that, but that one actually elevates a different peptide called the AHK copper peptide. And just like building a house, you have to have 2x4s, 2x6s. That's the foundation of your house. Protein is the foundation of your bones. It's not calcium. Calcium alone does not make your bones stronger. I'm sorry to burst the bubble. Calcium carbonate is chalk. If you have too much calcium in your bones, they become more brittle. These Fosamax and these other drugs, they pull more calcium and minerals into bone rather than focusing on building a strong protein foundation and matrix. One of the side effects of taking those drugs is increase in hip fracture. So you want to look at that. So back to the bone building. In this study, they measured the AHK copper peptide, and they measured a connector of collagen. So we make collagen from amino acids. We make protein strands. Many protein strands make collagen. There are these little connections called the N-terminal connection. And when you're breaking apart collagen, there's more of that in the bloodstream because those are the connectors that connected the collagen that's no longer together. The AHK copper peptide disappears from the blood when you are building bone because your body uses it to make strong bones. So there's other measurements as well. So what they did is they measured the disappearance of the AHK copper peptide because these people who were using this photobiomodulation patch were building bone. They were building bone as opposed to, there's a give and take all day from our bones. They're not static. There is bone building and bone resorption according to our exercise level. If we don't exercise for a week and we're lying in bed, our bones actually lose a little bit of density. Well, it puts it back. If everything's normal, you got all the raw materials. So there's this give and take all day. It is the AHK copper peptide that is used in that bone building.
Oh, wow. What a great way to explain that. And then the immune system, how do copper peptides stimulate the production of, uh, is it cyclines? Is that how you say that?
Cytokines.
Cytokines, which
Cytokines.
they play a big role in your iron metabolism. And how does this explain how do things change our health?
Well, what was the second one you said?
I was just I was saying, how do they stimulate the production and play a big role in the iron metabolism of our
Oh yeah, iron metabolism. Yeah, that's an interesting. In today's world where so many people are diagnosed with iron deficiency anemia. It may not be iron deficiency because the GHK copper peptide it plays a big role in the absorption of iron. Copper plays a big role in the absorption of iron, the transport of iron, and the incorporation of iron into hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is what our oxygen attaches to in our red blood cells. So you could have a copper deficiency, and then you wouldn't be able to absorb iron, transport iron, or incorporate it into your hemoglobin. So if a doctor has diagnosed you with an iron deficiency anemia, check your copper as well. It may be iron deficiency, but it also may be iron or a copper deficiency. That's how important of a role copper plays in respiration, our ability to hold on to oxygen. And that also plays a role in athletic performance. If you can carry more oxygen, you can do more work. And so you can work out harder and longer and faster. So that's a very important there. As far as the immune system, it is the GHK copper peptide that activates things like SOD and other important factors that come in to fight whatever we're fighting and activate that whole process. They're also, the GHK copper peptide is a really big antioxidant. We go through oxidative stress when we get attacked by bacteria, viruses, fungus, and those things. Having ample copper peptide is essential in being able to put up the best fight you can.
Oh, wow. And so working in your clinic and working with clients, can you tell us a story of the power of the patch? You've told us our story. I'd like to hear about some other people's stories.
There are a lot.
Well, just a few.
Yeah. Well, this one gentleman comes to mind, and he's given me permission to tell his story. They actually brought his wife in to the clinic because she had some really bad anxiety. So we weren't even talking about him, but I noticed how he was moving, and he looked like he was in so much pain. And I said, "What's going on with you, Scott?" And he tells me this. I've got this diagnosis of an ALS type syndrome. He was on 8 oxycodone a day. He was on 12 different prescription drugs. His legs were mostly numb. He could barely walk. Oh. And I said, Scott, I don't know if these are going to help you, but I actually gave him 10 patches because I just felt so bad for him. And he had like 6 or 7 kids, and they were homeschooling. And man, it was a big burden. He wasn't able to work. So 10 days later, he comes in, and he actually ran through our parking lot. Follow up, he reached out to me last summer, and he said, "Hey, Dr. Harmon, I just wanted to call and tell you, I wanted to thank you. And as a healthcare provider, if somebody tells us we helped them, We get 2 weeks worth of endorphins. That's just what makes us, that's what floats our boat. So he called me up and he said, he tells me I take no prescription drugs. That was $1,000 a month he was paying. No prescription drugs. I have no pain, he says. I'm fully employed. My life isn't the same life that I had before. And he wanted to thank me. I almost started crying. It was like so touching how he was telling me this story. Where others, you know, it's just, I'm sleeping better, or dad doesn't sit staring at the floor all day and he's actually engaging with people. What is that? Well, it's all about the synapses and the connections. And if we can connect pathways or rebuild those, regenerate those, now we start to win that battle. Or am I losing more neurons than I'm maintaining? And am I just losing? And now I can't remember people or things. So those are some of the really, really big things. Thousands of people over 3.5 years. And the big thing is, you're not taking a prescription drug. It's one of the things I tell people in our initial visit. I say, we don't do anything that causes pain here, especially younger people, teenagers. We don't do anything that causes pain, and we don't use anything that has any side effects at all. Not our lasers, not our microcurrent neurofeedback, not the patches. We don't do things that have side effects. And that's really comforting to them, because most people, by the time they get to my office, they've been on a lot of different drugs, and they're trying to get off of them. And that's what we do.
Well, people are always asking me, the power of the patch, like, how does it really, really work? And I try to explain to them the body's 98 degrees that activates with the heat of our body. Can you explain a little bit about how that works when it hits the body?
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. I want you to, so everybody knows, if you ask, I can't say everybody, but most people, if you ask them, what happens when we go outside in the sun? Their first or second answer is going to be, well, we get vitamin D. Well, my question is there vitamin D in the air? Is there vitamin D in the UV light? No. Here's the connection. We have trillions of nano antennas in our skin. Yes, antennas. The frequency of the UVB light excites those antennas, which are receiving messages. That frequency of light sends a signal to the body to make more vitamin D3. When we put the patch on, the patch has a crystal lattice structure that doesn't occur in nature. It was developed by David Schmidt, the brilliant Nikola type person, mind. He figured out, what can I put in that patch which would act like a diamond? When you look at a diamond, you see all these different colors. It's just that the diamond separates out the wavelengths of light, and they're interpreted by our eyes and our brain as colors. So we emit far infrared heat, near infrared. I say heat, but it's on the light spectrum. Microwave is on the light spectrum. 5G is on the light spectrum, right by microwave. How's that? So those wavelengths of light are in that spectrum. So is visible light. We emit some frequencies of visible light. We actually glow. It's just not seen by our human eyes. They can see it with instrumentation. David figured out what frequency, when reflected back into the body, would excite those nano antennas the same way that UV light does. Well, a different way, because it's like changing the channel. It's a different wavelength. That signal tells your body, turn on the GHK copper peptide factory. All of the benefits, or the potential benefits, of wearing that X39 patch can be found in the research that shows all of the benefits of the GHK copper peptide. And this is why I wrote the book. Somebody had to get this all in one spot.
Mhm.
and then say, hey, you can get GHK copper peptide through an IV, you can get it through an injection, or you can get it through a cream or a lotion from a dermatologist, or you can wear this photobiomodulation patch that signals your body to make your own. And basically, that's all of the research, everything that's ever been discovered, to my knowledge, of what the GHK copper benefits are in that book.
Yeah, this is your beautiful book.
Thank
So
you.
excited. So, and people that are working out, it promotes collagen production too, right?
Right, right. Collagen
That's really
production,
important because there's so many powders
which I
and
forgot to mention, as
yeah, go ahead.
building muscle, you got to make that out of something. It's collagen. So it's the GHK copper peptide that activates that collagen production.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for
Awesome.
that reminder. I left that out.
Yeah. So, was there anything else that you want to discuss with us today about this beautiful? I mean, it's just amazing what the power of the patch has done for my life and for thousands of people. And it this book has changed everything.
Yeah, two things. Two things I think are important to have before we end this call. One of them is that the GHK copper peptide resets 4,190 genes to a younger state. So we go through, when we oxidative stress, the ending of the gene is where the coding takes place. If the end of it is not healthy, it can't send a signal to wherever it's supposed to go. So the GHK copper peptide repairs those genes. It's what our body uses to repair it. And now that gene can start working again. And this is why, this is my own personal opinion, I have no proof at all. But when somebody has I call them the one patch wonder, where you look at them and they're saying these words to you, and you're a little bit confounded because it sounds more like a dream that they're describing, because I couldn't do this, and all of a sudden 24 hours later I can do that again. I think it's a gene that was just dormant. It wasn't working, and then all of a sudden it gets repaired, and then boom, it starts doing whatever it is supposed to do. But 4,190 of those genes. The other thing, actually, there's three things, but the other thing is,
No, go ahead. We got
it's
time.
known, the GHK copper peptide is known to activate production of our own stem cells. That is in the literature. That's not from me. That's not from any company. That is research from around the world about activating stem cells. The third thing, and I'm trying to remember, there's a patch for that, right? Going through my Rolodex, oh yeah, here it is. I got it. So why are cancer cells cancer cells? They forget, so to speak, that when I have a neighbor on all sides, I don't have to divide anymore. And then they go through a normal death cycle. Normal cells will live for so long, and then they will be destroyed, or they will die because they're old, they're sick. Cancer cells don't get that message, and they just keep multiplying. And then they invade the neighboring tissue. It has been shown several things. One, there is a slice of humanity that has these genetic expressions that kind of predispose them to be more vulnerable to having cancer, or more likely to get cancers. The GHK copper peptide regulates those genes down in these people. It also resets the cell death cycle of those cancer cells. Again, I'm a doctor. I'm not your doctor. I'm not making claims about cancer. I don't recommend you do anything before you run it by your healthcare provider. I'm just reporting what is going on in the literature.
Oh, wow. What an awesome time I've had with you. It's
Thank
just
you.
been great and lots of world of information that you have about stuff. So if somebody was on the seat and trying or on the fence and just trying to decide, okay, should I use this patch? Can you explain to them why they would use it and what your experience has been with it yourself? I know you talked a little bit about that, and then we will end the call today.
Yeah, my question would be more geared to when you know what the GHK copper peptide does, when you know that not LifeWave, but there was a study done, double blind, randomized, placebo controlled study of blood work that showed wearing the X39 patch signals your body and it does elevate your GHK copper peptide level in your blood. Knowing all of the benefits that have been proven globally, what that GHK copper peptide does, why would someone not want to put it on? If you do decide to use it, and if you're going to have kind of the attitude of, well, if it works for me, then, you know, I would tell other people if it works for me. Well, first of all, you're a human. It's going to work for you. Even if you were an animal, it would work for you. If you're going into it like that, make sure that you have something you are measuring. Because if you're not measuring anything, your bone density could get better and you wouldn't even know it because you didn't know it wasn't. And so measure something and give it some time and don't quit before the miracle happens, because they truly do when you elevate this peptide in your bloodstream.
And then David says that we need to wear the patch 1 month for every month that, or for every year that we are old, correct?
Every decade, yeah.
Every
1 month
decade,
for every
yeah.
decade of your life minimum. At that point, you know, most people are going to have so many benefits, and my wife and I have decided we're just going to use them the rest of our life.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it like what a tremendous seriously, if we can keep their body functioning the best it can be, and then we don't descend into some disorder, all of our Medicare costs go down.
Amen. That's a great thing in itself.
Less diabetes, less cognitive decline, less this, less that, less that. Then we have fewer expenses. We are taking care of our body with energy our bodies are already making, reflecting it back into our body. How much more simple can it get? And beautiful. I mean, we don't need a battery. You don't need a plug. Plug it into the wall. You can just put a little patch on.
Well, I
Elevate
love that
your
you were talking about frequencies were the future. So just in the few minutes we have left, frequencies are the future. And you talked about even our plants. And, I put the patch on my plants. People laugh at me. So it tell us just a few minutes about frequencies.
Well, our body, you can look at our body as frozen light. It's everything's slowed down to where it's actually, we can see it, we can feel it. But if you look at what is an atom made of, it's mostly empty space with a bunch of energy going around it. Whether it's the pineal gland, whether it's a muscle, different frequencies of sound affect different organ systems, different frequencies of light. We're learning more and more and more about this all the time. I have lasers in my office. We activate energy production in the primitive brain, in the brainstem, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, with pulsations of light that are cycling between 9 times a second, 20 times a second, 5,000 times a second, and 10,000 times a second. But those are the wavelengths of light that activate energy production in your parasympathetic nervous system. So that's mind-boggling. 10,000 times a second activates your ATP. in your brain stem cells. And people companies, doctors, whether it's sound, it's all wavelengths. They're just different wavelengths. We have a visible spectrum and then we have an audible spectrum. Both of those are only like a billionth of what's going on around us. We can't see it. Words are powerful. That's vibrational. Light, all of those frequencies, medicine is catching on. The really smart ones like David Schmidt are figuring out it is far better to give the body what it needs in wavelengths of light, sound, or whatever it is than it is to feed it a chemical. And so that's what we're involved here. That's what's involved in this whole system of patching that we have. Each patch has a different crystal lattice structure that selects out a different frequency that you're already making, puts it back into you. Hey, this frequency elevates your GHK copper peptide. This frequency elevates your epitalin from the Alavita patch. By the way, probably in about a month, I'm going to have a book about that one.
You are?
It gets elevated when you wear the Alavita patch. It's going to be all the research about that, epithalamin, the synthetic form. David calls it epitalon. I call it epitalin, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, that's this, admittedly, from David, it's like the second most powerful patch. So I want everybody to have a resource. What does that do? What does the literature say about it? Did you know that they took old male rats and used this on old male rats and they started acting like young male rats, if you know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
And all kinds of benefits. But that's another Zoom. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm working on right now.
That is so awesome. So you have another book coming out. Any other last words before we end the show, Dr. Harmon? Just want to thank you so much for being my special guest.
Thank you. It
Learned a lot.
I love talking about it. Somebody asked in one of the other interviews, they said, could you give us a brief description? And I said, I'm stuck on the brief part. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, there is no brief description. I get it.
So yeah, GHK copper peptide. It's the reverse aging peptide. What more can I say?
And a lot of people didn't really know about it until recently.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. This is another, I got frustrated. I would go to Dr. Lauren Picard's website and I guess he doesn't maintain it because all of those links, most of them were broken. You try to do some research on it, then you had to go to PubMed or National Institute of Health and dig through this. And most people don't like to read research papers. Mm-hmm. So that's what motivated me to put all that together.
Wow. Well, tell us a little bit how they can get this awesome book.
It's on
your information.
How to reverse aging, and they have it. Authors don't have any control over what Amazon charges on Amazon. They had it at $35.95 for a while. It's at $24.95, at least the last time I looked. So it is available on Amazon, either in Kindle or soft cover book.
Any Audible coming out for those that fall asleep when we're reading books?
I'm probably going to do it in my own voice. And I found out about a studio here close to where I live that I could go in, because there's certain restrictions they have.
I understand.
Yeah, so I can't just do it at home. It's got to be in a studio. But I do want to get that one out as well.
Great, because some of us fall asleep when we're reading books. So, well, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. And if anybody wants to talk to Dr. Harmon, is there any other information that you want to give us? So if somebody had any questions that they wanted to reach out to you about the book or anything about HG copper peptides that you could answer, is there information that they can get from you?
Yeah, they could email me at just Dr. Harmon, Dr. Harmon at ghkbook.com.
All right, awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining the show, Dr. Harmon. We have learned so much about your book and about HD copper peptides and the aging process and the power of the patch. So, I mean, nobody has anything to lose but just to try it, right? And beautiful things will happen. So, all right. And we look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
Yes, it was. Thank you. Take
Enjoy
care.
yourself.
God bless.
You too.